My name is Emma, and yes, I know. Emma sounds like a character from some old love story. A girl who always dreams too much, loves too fast, and cries too often. Maybe that is true, but let's not decide too early, right? When I was 20, I moved to a small town by the sea. People said it was a quiet place. Honestly, they lied. The town was not quiet at all. It was full of gossip, small dramas, and neighbors who acted like detectives without a license. Every time I went to the bakery, someone asked, "Emma, when will you get a boyfriend?" As if a loaf of bread tastes better when you share it with a man. I usually smiled politely, but inside I wanted to answer, maybe I just want bread, not romance. The town had one main street, a bakery, a cafe, a flower shop, and of course, the famous bookstore. Famous not because it was big or modern, no. It was famous because it was the only place where people could pretend they were cultured. You know, buying a book and never reading it. And this was the place where I first saw him, Daniel. He was tall, with dark hair and eyes that looked like they were hiding too many secrets. Of course, I told myself, don't even think about it, Emma. Men with secret eyes are dangerous. They look romantic at first, but then they leave you crying in the rain. That was my plan, to stay away. But then he smiled, and that smile was like someone opened a window in a dusty room. Fresh air, sunlight, hope. In 1 second, I forgot all the warnings I had ever given myself. Daniel worked in the bookstore. He looked too young to be surrounded by so many heavy novels, but maybe that was the point. He looked alive, and the books looked dead, and together it was interesting. The funny part? I didn't even like reading that much. Books were heavy. Books smelled like old paper. Books were too long. But suddenly, I was in that bookstore almost every day, pretending to look for novels, pretending to read the back covers, but really just watching him. Of course, the people of the town noticed. They always noticed everything. "Emma is in love," they whispered when I passed by. Honestly, it was like living in a bad TV show, the kind where you already know the ending, but you keep watching anyway. Daniel, however, never made fun of me. He talked to me slowly, like he had all the time in the world. He told me about classic novels, about poetry, about love stories that always ended in tragedy. I laughed once and said, "Great. So you are basically preparing me for disaster." He just smiled again. And that smile, well, it was enough to keep me awake at night. Maybe this was the start of something beautiful, or maybe it was the beginning of a slow disaster. At that time, I didn't know, but the truth is simple. I was already falling. The next week, I visited the bookstore again. Please don't ask me why. I told myself it was because I needed a new book, a smart book, something serious, maybe about history. But really, I just wanted to see Daniel smile again. He was standing behind the counter reading. Typical. When I walked in, he looked up and I felt my face turning red. Why does the human body do that? Why does it decide, oh, you like this person? Great. Let's make your face look like a tomato. "Looking for something special?" he asked. His voice was calm, slow, like he had no reason to hurry in life. "Yes," I said quickly. "I need a book." "Brilliant answer, Emma. Absolutely brilliant. A bookstore, and you want a book." I almost wanted to run away, but Daniel didn't laugh. Instead, he closed the book in his hands and walked to the shelves. "What kind of book?" he asked. I froze. What kind of book? The only books I read were cookbooks and one or two romances with ridiculous titles like Love Under the Moonlight. If I said that, he would think I was an idiot. "Maybe a novel?" I whispered. That sounded serious enough. He smiled a little, like he already knew the truth, and gave me a thin book. "This one," he said. "It's about love, of course." But not the easy kind. Is there an easy kind? I asked. Not really, he said, and for a second, his eyes looked older than his face, like he knew something I didn't. I bought the book, even though I already knew I would never finish it. The important thing was that he touched it before me, and now it was mine. Yes, I know how crazy that sounds, but when you're 20 and falling in love, even a book becomes a treasure. After that day, the bookstore became my second home. I went there accidentally almost every afternoon. Sometimes I bought books. Sometimes I just asked silly questions like, "Do you have a novel with a happy ending?" He always answered with a half smile and gave me something tragic instead. "Why always sad stories?" I complained once. "Do you want me to cry every night?" "Maybe tears are good," he said softly. "They show that you feel something real." I rolled my eyes, but later when I was alone, I thought about his words for hours. The gossip in town grew louder. People started smiling at me with that look. You know the one. The look that says, "We know what you are doing." Even the lady in the bakery stopped asking about boyfriends. She just winked when I came in. I told myself it was nothing, just small conversations in a small town. But deep inside, I already knew Daniel was slowly becoming the center of my little universe. And that was both beautiful and dangerous. One afternoon, the bookstore was strangely empty. No customers, no gossiping neighbors, just Daniel behind the counter reading again. Of course. What else would he do? "Do you ever go outside?" I asked. He raised his eyes slowly. "Sometimes." "Sometimes? You live 5 minutes from the sea and you choose to sit inside with dusty books?" "Books don't make me wet," he said simply. I laughed so loudly that the old man from the bakery next door looked through the window, suspicious. After that, I had no choice but to invite Daniel for a walk. "Come on," I said. "If you stay here all your life, you'll turn into a bookshelf." To my surprise, he agreed. And that is how we ended up walking by the sea, the waves hitting the shore like they wanted attention. The air smelled of salt and fish, not very romantic, but still better than old paper. We didn't talk much at first, just silence. Comfortable but strange, finally, I asked, "So, Mr. Secret Eyes, what do you do when you're not selling books?" He smiled faintly. "I read them." "Wow, shocking," I said. I never guessed. "Sometimes I write," he added. That caught my attention. "Really? What do you write?" "Stories. Mostly sad ones." Of course, typical Daniel. Sad books, sad stories, sad everything. Still, I wanted to know more. "And why sad?" He didn't answer right away. He stopped, looked at the waves, and said quietly, "Because happy endings are lies. Real life doesn't give them often." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. His voice was too serious, too heavy, like he carried something I couldn't see, so I laughed it off, like I always do. "Well, thank you for destroying my little romantic dreams." "Someone has to," he said, but his smile was soft again. We walked longer than I expected. The sun was low, painting the sea gold and pink. For one second, I imagined us as a couple from a movie, walking by the sea, saying clever things, falling in love. But then reality hit me. I was still Emma, the girl who came to the bookstore every day pretending she liked literature. When we returned to town, the bakery lady was standing outside. She saw us together and clapped her hands like she was watching the final scene of a wedding movie. I rolled my eyes. Great. Now the whole town will plan our future. Daniel only said, "Let them talk." Words don't change the truth. I wanted to ask what he meant by the truth, but I stayed quiet. Maybe I was afraid of the answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. His words, his voice, his serious eyes, they stayed with me. And in my heart, a question grew louder. What is he hiding? The next evening, I found myself outside the bookstore again. I told myself I only wanted to return the novel he gave me. The truth? I had read only 20 pages. Too many words, not enough action, but still, I wanted to see him. When I walked in, the shop was half dark. The lamps were off, only a small light behind the counter. Daniel was there, of course, writing in a notebook. His head was bent low, his hair falling forward. For a moment, I just stood in the doorway, watching him. "You look like a poet," I said finally. He lifted his eyes. "Poets usually starve," he answered. "Don't worry. I can buy you bread from the bakery." That made him laugh. A quiet laugh, but real. I decided I liked that sound. Maybe even too much. I gave him the book. "It was fine," I said, trying to sound smart. "You didn't finish it," he said without even checking. My mouth opened. "How do you know?" "I just know," he said with that half smile again. Honestly, it was both attractive and annoying. After that, he closed his notebook, locked the door, and said to walk with me. We walked through the small streets. The town was quiet now, only a few lights in the windows. People were inside, probably drinking tea and talking about us, because that was their favorite hobby. We reached the sea again. This time, it was night. The waves were louder, the wind colder. I wrapped my coat tighter and said, "So, mister." Secret eyes. "Tell me something true about yourself." He looked at the water for a long time. Too long. Finally, he said, "Truth is dangerous." I raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous? What are you, a spy?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No, just a man with stories that are better left unread." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. He sounded serious again, and I felt a small chill, not only from the wind. But then he turned to me and added softly, "Maybe one day, I'll tell you." And just like that, my heart decided to beat twice as fast. I hated myself for it, but there was nothing I could do. We sat on a bench near the water, not talking much. Just silence, broken by waves. Sometimes silence says more than words. At some point, he looked at me, really looked, and for a second I thought he might. Well, you know, but he didn't. He just gave me that mysterious smile again and turned his eyes back to the sea. Later, when I went home, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Who was Daniel really? Why did his smile feel so warm and his words so cold at the same time? I wanted answers, but part of me already knew answers might hurt. The next Saturday, the weather was unusually warm. The sea was calm, the sun just enough, and the gossip in town even louder than usual. When I walked to the bakery, 3 old ladies were already waiting like soldiers. "Emma," one of them said, "are you walking with Daniel today?" I gave her my sweetest smile. "No idea. Maybe I'll walk with the moon instead." They didn't laugh, of course. Old ladies never enjoy irony. But later that afternoon, Daniel appeared outside the bookstore as I passed by. He wasn't holding a book this time. He was just standing there, looking at the street like he was searching for something or someone. "Coincidence?" he said when he saw me. "Sure," I answered. "You just stand outside waiting for every girl in town?" He shook his head. "No, just one." And yes, my stupid heart decided to melt right there in front of the flower shop. I prayed the gossip ladies were not watching from behind the curtains. We walked together through the town, this time in daylight. People waved at us, smiled, winked. I pretended not to notice. Daniel pretended not to care, but I could feel the weight of every pair of eyes. "Do you ever get tired of this place?" I asked. "All the time," he said simply. "Then why stay?" "Some things hold you down," he answered, and for a second his voice grew darker. I wanted to ask what things, but I stopped myself. I was afraid he would close the door again, like he always did when the topic was his past. Instead, I said, "Well, I stay because the bakery sells good croissants. That made him laugh. A real laugh this time, louder than before. People turned their heads, probably shocked that the mysterious bookstore man could sound human. We ended up by the sea again. It was starting to become our place. The water glittered, the air was soft, and the moment felt dangerously perfect. He sat on the sand, and I sat next to him. For a while, we didn't say anything, just the waves talking for us. Then suddenly, he looked at me with those secret eyes. "Emma," he said quietly, "do you believe in fate?" My heart jumped. Fate. The word sounded big, dramatic, like something from the sad novels he loved. "I don't know," I said slowly. "I believe in bread, coffee, and bad decisions. Fate? Not so much." He smiled at that, but the smile didn't last. His eyes turned serious again. Sometimes fate doesn't ask what you believe. It just happens. I wanted to ask, "What do you mean?" But before I could, he stood up, brushing the sand from his hands. "Come on, let's go back." And just like that, the moment disappeared. No confession, no kiss, just silence and questions left in the air. That night, I stared at the ceiling, whispering to myself, what is he hiding? And why do I already feel like his secrets will break me? The town had a new hobby, us. Every corner, every shop, every bakery table. People whispered my name together with his. When I walked into the cafe, the waitress smiled too wide and said, "Table for two?" "No," I said quickly. "Just coffee." Her smile grew sharper. "Are you sure? Daniel was here last week, sitting alone. Looked like he was waiting for someone." Of course, she said it loud enough for half the cafe to hear. I wanted to hide under the table. The gossip followed me everywhere. At first, I tried to laugh, but slowly, it began to feel heavy, like an invisible net pulling me down. Everyone seemed to know our story before we even lived it. One evening, I asked Daniel, "Doesn't it bother you? The way people talk?" He shrugged. "Words are only air." "Easy for you to I muttered. "You're not the one who gets asked every morning when the wedding is." He smiled faintly. "Maybe they just like happy endings." "Then they're in the wrong town," I said. But his smile didn't fade. It was almost sad, like he agreed with me too much. A few days later, something strange happened. I went to the bookstore, as usual, but the door was locked. A paper sign hung there. "Closed today." No reason, no explanation. I waited, thinking maybe he'd come back soon. But the hours passed. Evening came. The lights inside stayed off. Finally, I left, my chest tight with questions. The next day, the shop was open again. Daniel stood behind the counter, calm as always, like nothing happened. "Where were you yesterday?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Nowhere important," he said. "Nowhere important," I repeated. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have," he said softly. Something in his eyes told me not to push, but of course my heart didn't listen. "Are you hiding something from me?" I asked. For a second, silence fell between us like a heavy curtain. Then he smiled that familiar secret smile. "Emma, everyone hides something." It should have been a normal answer, but it wasn't. His voice, his eyes, the way he looked past me instead of at me. It felt like a warning. That night, lying in bed, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Just a closed shop, just a vague answer. But the whisper inside me grew louder. He is not telling you everything. And when he does, it will hurt. The bookstore became my routine. I told myself I went there for the books. But let's be honest, I barely opened them at home. They just sat on my table, collecting dust and pretending to be important. What I really wanted was Daniel, his voice, his smile, his strange half answers. But one evening, something changed. I came earlier than usual. The door was unlocked, but the shop was quiet. Too quiet. I stepped inside and saw Daniel at the back, leaning over a table. He didn't notice me at first. He was holding a small photograph in his hands. I froze. The way he looked at that picture, it wasn't just looking. It was like he was somewhere far away, drowning in memories. His face was softer, sadder, almost broken. "Daniel?" I said quietly. He jumped, hiding the photo under a book in one fast movement. "Emma," he said too quickly. "You're early." "Yes," I answered slowly, "and you're hiding things." He forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just an old memory. Nothing important." "Funny," I said. "You use the word nothing a lot. Nothing important. Nothing to tell. Nothing to worry about. Maybe one day you'll tell me something real." For a second, I thought he might finally open up. His lips parted, his eyes softened, and then some he closed again, just like a door slamming shut. "Not today," he said simply. I didn't push, but inside I burned. That night, lying in bed, I replayed the moment 100 times. What was on that photograph? Who was it? Why did he hide it so fast? The next day, the gossip in town got worse. A man at the cafe whispered to his friend, "That Daniel, he's not from here." Came out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. The word stuck in my mind like a splinter. When I asked Daniel later where he was from, he gave the same answer as always. Here and there, nowhere, and everywhere. I laughed on the outside, but inside, I felt the cold hand of doubt. For the first time, I wondered, maybe I wasn't falling in love with Daniel at all. Maybe I was falling into a story I didn't understand. A story that might end with me broken. And the scariest part, I wasn't sure I wanted to stop. It happened on a rainy night. Of course it did. Sad stories always love the rain. I went to the bookstore hoping Daniel would smile at me, calm me, make me forget the whispers in town and the questions in my head. But when I walked in, he was already packing boxes. Books everywhere, empty shelves, the air heavy with goodbye. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Leaving," he said simply. "Leaving?" My voice cracked. "Just like that? Without a word?" He sighed, ran a hand through his dark hair, and for the first time, he looked tired, truly tired. "Emma, I should have told you earlier. But some stories are not meant to be shared. I came here to hide, not to stay." "To hide from what?" I asked, my hands shaking. He looked at me with those secret eyes, and finally he answered. "From a life I destroyed, from someone I loved and lost, and from myself." The silence after that was worse than any scream. "You should have trusted me," I whispered. "I wanted to," he said softly, "but fate doesn't care about what we want." The rain outside grew louder. It sounded like applause for the worst ending ever. "So that's it?" I asked. "You break my heart and disappear?" Daniel stepped closer, touched my face with trembling fingers. His eyes were full of everything he never said. "Emma, if I stay, I'll only hurt you more. But if I leave, maybe you'll be free." I wanted to beg him to stay, to shout, to fight. But all I did was nod, because deep down, I knew he was right. The next morning, the bookstore was empty. No Daniel, no books, just silence. The town kept whispering, of course. But for me, the story had ended. And like every book Daniel ever gave me, it was a sad one. But maybe the saddest part was this. Even knowing it would end this way, I would still fall for him again.